Okay, we will now have some insights from Tobias and Nicolas and tell us almost everything about it, I suspect. No, kidding. Okay, give a warm round of applause for those two guys. We're looking forward to your talk.
Yeah, thanks a lot for the introduction, and good afternoon, everybody. So we are very happy to be here to talk about SAP from an attacker's perspective today. That's us. It's my colleague Nicolas.
Hello.
And myself. So we are both penetration testers at USD, both also specialized in SAP pen tests. Now for Nicolas, that's also like specialization in Kubernetes and DFIR. And for me, obviously we have the connection point of SAP pen tests, but for me the other side of the specialization is more into mobile penetration testing. But yeah, today we're here for the SAP part. And with that, let's come to a quick motivation introduction part. SAP and its challenges, we call it. So starting off with SAP significance, I expected some more show of hands for the SAP usage as well. But when you look at it, SAP really is a market leader in enterprise application software. The numbers we brought here is from their corporate fact sheet. So 85 of the 100 largest companies in the world actually are S/4HANA customers at SAP. They also say in total SAP customers, it's 98 of the 100 biggest companies. So quite a ratio there. But at the same time also the majority, 80% of the customers of SAP are also small and medium enterprises. So in that sense, there's really a, let's say, cross-cutting concern where SAP is in use. And in total, it's sums up to 84% of total global commerce. So quite a number we're talking about. And with that, of course, there also comes the significance for securing SAP systems. Because that's usually also where the crown jewels are located of the company, and attackers know, of course. So increasingly, we see that SAP systems and applications are also targeted in cyber attacks. So securing it really becomes highly significant. That does come with some challenges, though, from the let's say defender perspective. When we look at SAP software, we have a large part of that which is proprietary. Access to it is limited, so also when it comes to information and documentation, usually you do need the proper accounts and partner programs. And also when you look deeper into the software, the network protocols, for instance, that are in use are also highly proprietary. Just listing a few here with NI, DIAC, SNC, RFC. So that's all proprietary stuff that's up until now or recently not that well documented. So there's really some trouble you need to get into to look deeper into it. Another point is the configuration part. We will look into this a bit later. There's lots of places where you can do the configurations. Sometimes you can get a feeling it's a bit contradicting at some places because you have multiple values that you have to set which are going into a similar direction. And even if you get the one right, then you might mess up the other one and open up some doors for the attackers. So that's something to keep in mind. And also, if you look into, let's say, some research side of it, really looking at the components, analyzing them and so on and so forth, then it's also the question, of course, of availability. It's not that you can just download it and run a local instance easily to hunt for vulnerabilities. So there's also some challenges involved there. And what I said before, recently we've seen some progress also looking into these proprietary protocols, but of course that involves large parts of reverse engineering also to understand the protocol, look how it works, and really look into where security issues might be located. So bottom line from defender perspective in that sense is that in order to secure your SAP environments, there's really extensive domain knowledge and experience that is required. Or switching it to the attacker perspective now, of course, the attackers know and security relevant issues are also easily introduced, and attackers are, of course, happy to exploit them. So let's have a look, let's say a bit more deeply technical into what this means. Now this is a Wireshark traffic capture from a regular SAP interaction, so using the SAP GUI. So before I mentioned the protocol DIAC, so that's what you see here traffic-wise. And if you look at it, doesn't look like it makes much sense at first sight, right? And that's exactly the point what I said with the reverse engineering. So there has been some work put into this and research, and now there's also like plugins that you can use in this instance for Wireshark to really like put some meaning into this and get actually what's going on under the hood. So this is what it looks like with the right tools, with proper tools. And you can see in this instance, of course, it's a deliberately insecure example, of course, right? So here we can see the unencrypted password, because in this instance the part was actually readable if you disassemble the DIAC protocol part. But we'll look into this, like how to secure this, how to use proper encryption for the communication part a bit later on. For now, let's take a small step back and look like common vulnerabilities and pitfalls that we do see in SAP environments from a broader perspective. What we do see more and more also on the SAP side is, of course, web applications. So if you are in touch with SAP software, SAP components, then you will probably have seen Fiori applications. So this is what nowadays is really the main part where the web applications are built on, either on-premise or cloud. So we still see both. There's some moving going on currently, more and more to the cloud part, but that will not be too much the focus of today. When we look a bit deeper under the hood, also for the web applications, what we usually have underneath is the custom code that is responsible for the functionality. So that's all written in ABAP and located in the ABAP stack then. We have very classically, of course, everything regarding user permissions, authorizations inside the SAP GUI, role concepts, and so on and so forth. Also there a lot can go wrong. We'll also have a look later at this. And I already touched a bit the encrypted communications part, which of course also comes into play. So quite a big variety. Of course, we cannot dive into everything too deeply today, but we will try to give you an overview and like some interesting parts here. So let's kick it off with the web application part. So I already mentioned SAP Fiori. So as I said, you might have seen this, like on the left side, you see this very classic Fiori look, right, with the tiles of the different applications that are offered. And then the main screen, like for each application that you're running there. In this instance, just a small sample shop offered by SAP. But in general, that's how it looks like on the outside. If you look a bit inside what's going on, then it's a lot of OData happening. So basically, these Fiori applications offer like a level of abstraction for database accesses, and then the OData part is there for actually building these access operations. So usually that is transmitted in the get parameters of HTTP requests. You can see that here, for instance, for getting some category parts, and then you have like your select query stuff all inside the get parameter. So some of you might think already that looks promising. Let's have a look whether we can inject something there. Was also our first intention back then, but usually that's not where we find the interesting stuff. But what we do see quite a lot is problems on the access control if you go inside the OData operations then. So this is an example from the leave requests application, which is offered by SAP as a component that you can install for managing like your vacation leave requests that have to be properly then approved. And here, you see with the CBE earlier this year, what we found there was that you could actually set yourself as the approver. And well, then of course you can approve your own vacation requests, which is nice. You can go on vacation whenever you want, and that's something that we see, let's say quite often in this sense, because when you look at the OData access control mechanisms that are there, you have to really like think it in a fine granular way to like look at all the attributes and see which should be writable, which should be immutable, and maybe which should only be readable. Moving away a bit from the web part to the, let's say, more traditional system scanning, port scanning, and service enumeration part. This is what, let's say, classical port scan of an SAP system may look like. It's quite often that we see something like this. So lots of open ports, something there which is, I would say, quite normal, or which you see also in other systems, right? An SSH service, then something on port 25. But when you look a bit deeper into it, also you do see like these clusters of different services that follow this scheme for standard port numbers. That's also something that SAP actually provides openly, so you can look up how this is like built up. For instance, just to take one example, these 3,200, 3,201 ports, that's where the SAP GUI access is hosted, or where the SAP GUI connects to. And similar to this, like all of these follow this clustering, and you get like an idea which service is running for which instance of the SAP system there. And you see it here, right? Quite a lot of services that are running. Oftentimes we see even more. And where there's a lot of services, of course, there's a lot of attack surface that you can look at. Maybe also some components that are not, let's say, looked at in assessments regularly. So another example here for something we found was at the SAP content server, which, as the name says, is just hosting different parts here that you can then download afterwards. And what we had here was a classic input sanitization issue. So you see the P version parameter here, and actually if you put something there that's not recognized, then you get an error message, and in this you could actually inject content. You see it on the screenshot basically, so everything comes into this error header and is put out there. And then you can set your own content type to HTML and then put some nice cross-site scripting. So that's like one example. And then, of course, the response would continue with the usual stuff here, but up there, that's really what is interesting for the XSS part here. So yeah, in that sense, I said it before, we have quite some complex configuration stuff here that's going on. So there's lots of opportunities where you can misconfigure something as well. I mean, there's stuff that's, let's say, very general, right? Like cryptographic settings and so on, password policies. But what we will move on now, what did I do? Oh, okay. What we look at now is the more SAP-specific stuff. Something we do see quite often, for instance, is the the management console that's misconfigured, where you can actually, without an authentication, get lots of log files, oftentimes more than several gigabytes we get. And something that's also interesting is like the configuration for these proprietary protocols and also hashing algorithms for the passwords, how they are stored. And with this, I hand over to Nicolas, who will talk a bit more about this stuff.
Exactly. So we already saw this screenshot earlier, and as Tobias already kind of said, in the best case, we still wouldn't be able to read the password here, because in the best case, user credentials only should be transmitted encrypted. However, the configuration of the encryption in SAP is a bit complex. We see here on the right side the different options you have in the sub GUI, in the client, which you can choose. First, you have to actually activate secure network communication, so that you even have the possibility to encrypt your data on transfer. But yeah, you also need to choose the right option. So the correct one would be either the last one or the third one, privacy protection. The first two, authentication and integrity only, wouldn't help you to not send your password unencrypted to the network. However, as I said, that is only the configuration in the client, and during pen tests, we try to recommend that the user and the client has as little control over the security as possible, and such important security features should be enforced by the server. However, it was, until last year, quite difficult to assess the security configuration for this parameter that is enforced by the SAP server. And that's why we wrote and published this tool, SNC Scan, which is able to start communication with each SAP server and read out what configuration is there in place. And the important one would be the last one here. The minimal supported protection should be the value 3 for privacy or sealed or encrypted communication. Also, the SNC only encrypted GUI parameters should be set to true to enforce that no client could voluntarily set the setting to a lower or bad setting. So the next topic we will cover is transactions. Transactions are kind of cryptic names of programs that you can run through the SAP GUI and that let you do various tasks from server administration to data handling and day-to-day jobs. We brought, I think, 2 small examples of transaction codes that were that we discovered in pen tests that were allowed for normal users, and we will try to show the impact that can have. The first one would be SM49, which is basically code execution. So if you enter SM49 up there in the transaction box, you get to this screen, and you can then choose which command to run. And there are quite some interesting choices, for example, cut or DD, which I think a lot of you know what to do with those. However, sometimes that might not be enough. You want to run something else. And you can also add your own commands that you want to run. In this example, it's just bash with who am I as a proof of concept. And here we have then the output, which is the username, the administrator that runs the SAP system on the server. Now, we still need to prove the impact of this code execution to a customer who maybe says, okay, you can run some code, maybe disrupt some services, but what else can you do with it? However, you can, of course, completely interact with a database. For example, here we have the possibility to read out all password hashes. That, of course, implies that you also can access other data that is stored in the database of SAP, and you can basically do whatever you want. In the bottom of the slide, we have a small comparison. That, again, is a configuration you need to set correctly. For legacy reasons, SAP systems still have quite a few unsecure hashing algorithms for the storage of the password hashes, and only the last one, the PVD salted hash, should be used, as it's much slower to be cracked. However, you don't actually need code execution to get the password hashes. There's also a transaction that lets you interact with the database of an SAP system, and you can read out the hashes nicely in the SAP GUI. That's also kind of nice. Okay, another topic we have is not the SAP system itself, but connected systems. What we see here is a SAP Business Connector, and as you maybe can see from the screenshot, it's a bit older, and I think it maybe just wasn't in the scope of a lot of security assessments, because when we first started, we found quite a few issues with it and reported them also. Okay, now to the last chapter of our slides. Trying to maybe give a bit of a uplifting after all these vulnerabilities. First one, I would like to introduce the OWASP CBAS project. It's a project that mainly covers SAP systems, SAP software, and so on. We also have Wasim here today, one of the major organizers of this project. And yeah, a lot of tools, a lot of knowledge that we used in our pen test and also in this slide set have their origin in this project. Also the Wireshark dissectors come from this project. And yeah, it's still being expanded and new stuff is added to this project. Another positive thing I wanted to share is we had a few vulnerabilities and CVEs in this slide set, and we found the responsible vulnerability disclosure process with SAP is quite pleasant. So it's a quick response. Also, good support in trying to figure out if our customers in the pen test did mess up something, some configuration, or if it's actually an issue with the SAP code. And yeah, there's also a Hall of Fame where we are listed a few times, I think. Okay, last slide, the takeaways. The first was from the introduction. SAP is quite complex, can be quite complex. The complexity makes it difficult to secure the systems, the environment. SAP and its third-party software is still affected by common vulnerabilities we find in every systems. And to end on a positive note, we have an increasing community around SAP security and are trying to share how to best configure these systems. Thank you.